Mohammed Hijab, a popular Muslim apologist, recently posted this video where he strongly rejected the claims made by Gad Saad, a Jewish Canadian professor, about Islamic law being discriminatory and unjust toward Jews. So I thought it would be a good idea to spend some time going over some of the classical texts of Islam to show what the Prophet Muhammad and the scholars of Islam said about the treatment of Jews and other non-Muslims living under Islamic law. Keep in mind that as Hijab is a Sunni Muslim, I will only be relying on Sunni sources in this video. And as always, all the references will be in the video description. Since this is a fairly large topic, I will be splitting this video into multiple parts to focus on each category of claims separately. In this first part, I'll be talking about the two claims that Professor Saad makes in the video, which Hijab is responding to here.
On his deathbed, Muhammad said, "Promise me that you will rid Arabia of the Jews." That doesn't sound very peaceful. As long as you are a good dhimmi, and if I decide that your daughter is really pretty and I'd like to marry her, you're going to fork her, right, Jew? That's what it's called to be a dhimmi.
The first claim that Professor Saad makes is that the Prophet Muhammad said on his deathbed, "Promise me that you will rid Arabia of the Jews." Now, while these aren't the exact words used by Muhammad in the authentic narrations found in Islamic texts, Professor Saad is correct in substance here, since the Prophet said, "I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslims." This has been reported in Sahih Muslim, as you can see here, as well as in Sunan Tirmidhi here. In fact, this question was specifically asked to the Islamic scholars who run the IslamQA website, and this is what they said. The question that was asked was, what is the meaning of the expulsion of the Jews as narrated in the Hadith? I hope that you could explain the presence of the Jews in Medina, as it is narrated that the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, expelled them from the city. The title of the response gives the answer away fairly immediately. There is no mincing words here. The Jews have no right to enter the Arabian Peninsula. The Prophet commanded that the Jews be expelled from the Arabian Peninsula and said that no two religions should coexist in the Arabian Peninsula. This is the Shari, that is legal ruling. It is not permissible for any mushrik, that is disbeliever, to remain there. With regards to the presence of the Jews in Medina, Khaybar, etc., this was before the command to expel them, as is well known. The command to expel them came during the final illness of the Prophet. Then Omar, may Allah be pleased with him, expelled them after that. Yeah, so as you can see, even Muslim scholars today assert that Jews are not allowed to enter Arabia, and this is the result of following the explicit commands of the Prophet Muhammad, a command that was followed by the second righteous caliph of Islam, Omar. So it is unanimously accepted by Islamic scholars that the Prophet explicitly commanded the ethnic cleansing of Jews from Arabia before his death, and this command was fulfilled by his closest followers. So Professor Saad is completely correct in substance here. Note, however, how Hijab doesn't actually respond to this claim. He simply deflects it by claiming that the quotations are not from the primary sources of Islam.
What is your response?
Well, my response to that is that the quotations that he's bringing forward are not actually from the primary sources of Islam. That's why it's very important when someone does make a claim about Islam that they bring forward the primary sources.
Okay, but they are in the primary sources of Islam, as I've shown here. And Hijab certainly knows about them too, so he's simply refusing to address this issue because it is actually a very embarrassing one for Muslim scholars and apologists. So they either tend to ignore it or engage in fanciful mental gymnastics to make it seem that this was a perfectly just command of the Prophet. Anyway, moving on to the next claim. Professor Saad also says that Jews were forced to marry their daughters to Muslims if the Muslims demanded it. Now, I've never seen such a ruling in the books of Islamic law. In fact, according to all scholars, Muslim men are encouraged to marry Muslim women and are discouraged from marrying Christians or Jews. So Professor Saad appears to be mistaken here, at least as far as Islamic law is concerned. It is true, though, that Muhammad did enslave a beautiful Jewish woman named Safiya bint Huyay after her tribe was defeated in battle by Muhammad's army, and he then later freed her and married her. But this wasn't a case where he demanded her hand in marriage from her father, since her father had already been killed by Muhammad's army. Now, Mohammed Hijab brings up this case of Safiya as a demonstration of the Prophet not being anti-Semitic, but this is an atrociously bad argument, which I'll be going over in the next part of the series, which I'll be posting tomorrow.